What's going on, people? My name's Timmy Joe, making videos about computers on the internet. As you saw from that intro, I have switched my GPU test rig over to this beautiful case from Gamerstorm. This is the Macube 550. It sounds like some sort of skateboard move. Do the Macube 550 off of the Vert Slam into the Sailfish, whatever. But if you would believe their little manual here, it's the McBuey 550. They misprinted it on the label. That's really funny, but throw that out of the window. Wasn't much help anyways. But pretty interesting case. Not a traditional layout whatsoever. Reminiscent of the Inwin 303, sort of, but way better for airflow than that case. That case is kind of a nightmare if you've ever experienced it. I had my main rig in it for a while. It was bad for airflow, the way it intakes from the back and does this thing through the power supply and goes things and stuff. This thing's sort of like that case, but not really. So we see here, nice little tempered glass, comes off real easy. There's a magnet at the top here and here that hold this in, and it's hinged at the bottom. So with one hand, you could likely install it and away you go. I love that. Toolless design, no, putting retainers here and here, getting your fingerprints all over it. Fairly easy to take off. And then you take that off. It's a nice tinted panel, pretty cool. And then inside you see I've got an AIO, their Castle AIO, hooked up, and it intakes from the back, which we'll look at in a second. And then I have this whole other line of fans right here that blows air this way, and then one 140 mil there, ouch, and one 120. This is actually the only fan that comes with this case, is this fan right here, but it's usually installed over here, which makes, ouch, more sense. But anyways, so I have it like a load of fans in here. There's 9, 10, 11 fans, plus whatever's in the GPU. And this is basically the only way I would recommend having this case laid out, because if you're gonna do an AIO, you're gonna definitely have to put it here, not like here, like traditionally, because check out this. Whoops. This panel has a mesh here, and it intakes through like millimeter here, a little bit on the bottom. Nope, not even on the bottom. It literally only intakes on the sides here, and not a lot of air gets through there. So you wouldn't want to mount any sort of cooling solution here. It's not a good idea. They were actually telling me I would be best to put an air cooler on this case, and I was thinking, I wonder why. Well, I guess, I don't know, depending on how you laid it out, that would be a better idea, especially because of where you have to mount 3.5-inch hard drives and stuff like that. But we'll get to that in a second. So spinning it around, we can see that there's a nice hexagonal, or I guess little triangle things there that intake in the back of the case, and literally, direct air. And there's not a lot of resistance through this, unless you leave this plastic thing that it normally has on it. Now, I guess they did this for aesthetics or something, but I don't see why you need to have this. All it does is obstruct airflow with some extra plastic and stuff in the way. So I just took it off. I don't see the need to have that on there. And then that's pretty good airflow through this thing. And that goes right into your cooler. So if you set it up that way, it shouldn't be bad. 2.5-inch drives fit here, and then pretty decent cable management. There's rubber grommets and stuff. You're gonna have a lot of cables in this case. It took me a long time to build in this case. Jesus, like an hour when it usually takes me 20 minutes to build a computer. Now, this is my GPU test rig. It's got a big motherboard. I put lots of fans in this. I get why, but it's not for the faint of heart. And you definitely wanna be mindful of what your setup is before you consider this case. So if we put this back on, and we'll spin her back around, whoop, there we go. You see, get that intake, and then it hits the glass. And without these fans to kind of push the rest of the air that way, I think this would be a bad deal. And then what's bad about that is the only other place to mount hard drives is there is a little cage right here where you could put another 2.5. I decided to keep it out, even though it doesn't do much for the aesthetics because there's still the tooling for it there. But guess where the 3.5-inch hard drives go if you want to put some in this case? Kind of weird. They give you these brackets, and I was like, where do these go? Do they go in the basement? Nope, there's not enough room for them, especially with a big fat power supply in there. I guess you're actually supposed to just mount them like here, like where the fans would go. So if you don't want to put fans there and you want to put these in there, you're going to see your hard drives and all of the cables that are hanging off of them. Or I guess if you wanted to do an air cooler and just intake through this, like, not even joking, millimeter section here, then you could mount them like here, and then you'd have to run the cables inside to them or something. I would just say if you have lots of 3.5-inch hard drives, don't buy this case unless you, I don't know, cooling isn't a big deal for you, because this is going to obstruct stuff depending on how you do things. So I thought of this after too. You could have the fans like this in, you know, with an air cooler maybe, and then on this side have the hard drives mounted in here, and that would probably make a lot more sense. But if you're running an AIO, these things are pretty much out the window. Really, the only way you can lay this case out is the way I did it, I think, for high airflow. Otherwise, maybe you don't care so much about overclocking and stuff. You could get away with mounting these and, you know, you put a hard drive in here and then a hard drive on top. You could do 4, I guess, but that's like an afterthought thing to me. It tells me that I don't know, this isn't meant for people with lots of hard drives. But you could do 3 2.5-inch, put an extra one here. A lot of people are doing NVMe drives and maybe a couple, you know, terabyte or a 2 terabyte SSD. You know, they're getting cheap enough these days that maybe you don't need 3.5-inch drives. Maybe this is just a gaming rig and you have all your gaming stuff on NVMe drives and a couple SSDs. Then it should be fine. So AIOs, definitely gotta mount here, can't mount here. Custom water cooling? Not in this case. Unless you have only maybe your CPU in the loop, or I don't know, because you're only really putting 1 rad. Oh, I guess you could put 120 mil there, if that's how you want to rig it. Like, there would be room to mount like lots of stuff, like to mount the reservoir and the pump, if you figured it out. But this really being the only real spot you can put a rad, except for there, just not a good idea to me. I don't know. So I think this is the setup you're going to want with this. Or you're going to want 6 fans here and an air cooler, and then maybe it'll work. But, you know, I'm not joking. When it's in this configuration, really good airflow. Better airflow for my GPUs, that's for sure. Compared to the case I took this out of, you saw in the intro there, I had the Corsair Crystal 680. There was no room for longer GPUs in there. And when I had the blower style Radeon 5700 XT Anniversary Edition in that case, it was getting even worse temperatures, you know, for that blower card, which is not a good idea. When I put it in here, instantly the temperatures were much better. The memory temperatures and stuff were much better. So because there's so many fans and there's like a separation and like 2 fans, 3 fans are blowing air this way, it's getting a, you know, pretty good airflow across your VRM and stuff like that. So basically air would intake through here, and then this set of fans would blow the air that way. And because it's all sealed up and there's no, you know, ventilation on the top, you're pressurizing the case to exit all the air out the back, which is the way you want to do things. And I find it actually really works out in its favor here. As far as having, you know, an air cooler in here, like I suppose you could fill the 6 fans up here, maybe even the 7 with the bottom here, and then, you know, have the air cooler get all that air and it would work out for you. But I think you're best to have an AIO setup exactly the way I have here. Or if you're going to put a 240, you'd have to put an extra fan down here as well, because you're going to need that cool air, because this is just so limited if that's how you're going to plan on getting the air. And I don't know. It's an odd setup, but I like it because it's different. It's out of the box. It's different. It's definitely, and you know what? Came with no RGB LEDs whatsoever. I added some, like the Castle has the you know, the pump is lit up. Those are the stock fans that come with it. So, you know, I have these light up fans from Deepcool lying around. I put them in there so that we get some white light into the case, which really nice, you know, matches the exterior of the case. I put a couple of RGB strips up here that are glowing white down, so that when you have this really, you know, dark tempered glass panel on here, and you know, it's in a dark room, it looks really smart. I think it looks really, really, really sexy and really good. Kind of different than your 3 RGB fans puking out the front and, you know, a bunch of rainbow lights or whatever. So that's the Macube. And you know what? It wouldn't be very recommendable if it was as expensive as I thought it was going to be. Even though it only comes with 120 mil fan up here, I was imagining this case would be like more than $150, but it's $120. It's actually $109.99 on Newegg for the black version. but normally I think it goes for $119.99, and that's not bad. Actually, Deepcool's been really good about keeping their case prices like reasonable when everyone else, because of the tariffs and stuff like that, or the trade war that's going on, everyone's been kind of jacking their prices up like crazy. Like for $120 for this huge case, I think is pretty decent. But keep in mind, you're gonna have to buy at least 6 fans, depending on your AIO or your cooler situation, to mount in all these holes. And if you've got 3.5-inch drives, forget about it. I don't know. I didn't even care to set it up. Like I could have. I think this is such an afterthought. It was kind of silly, but I really like it as it is because I made it work. So as long as you're willing to make some compromises, or your system is kind of like mine, you know, maybe it'll work out for you or whatever. I'm at Watch Timmy Joe Instagram and Twitter. This has been a look at the Macube 550, or the McBooey, according to this paper. And yeah, not for hard drive people, not for, I don't know, not for custom water cooling, but for the right audience. I'm glad they're thinking out of the box and doing something different, because I think it works out aesthetically really well, and airflow well is pretty good in it as well, as long as you make these compromises. I'll see you guys in another video. Thank you very much for watching.